call to order the regular board meeting of the North County Transit District for November 17th, 2022. Before we begin, members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page, please note that in order to lost my place on my script. Then in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. In addition, you must also register by sending an email containing your name or phone number and the agenda item on which you wish to speak to clerk@nctd.org. I will now ask Suhail Rodriguez, our wonderful clerk of the board, to call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board Member Rodriguez. Board Member Hinsey. Here. Board Member Contreras.
Present.
Board Member McNamara. Board Member Desmond.
Here.
Board Member Quirk.
Here.
Board Chair Edson.
Here.
Board Member Jenkins.
Here.
Vice Chair Patel.
Here.
That concludes the roll.
Great. Vice Chair Patel, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
All right, put your right hand over your heart. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Suhail, will you now provide us a safety brief and evacuation procedures?
Yes. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevators. Once cleared of the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of the building. There's a portable defibrillator on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you, Suhail. Are there any changes to the agenda today?
Yes, Madam Chair. Consent item number 2, an update on the Pronto Regional Fare System, and consent item number 15 to approve an MOA between NCTD and SMART for Sprinter train attendants and operators were both pulled by staff and deferred to a future board meeting. A revised agenda was sent to the board and it has been updated on our website.
Great, thank you. Suhail, do we have any public comments today?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. Ms.
Please.
Camila Rang. She is on Zoom. Ms. Rang,
Hello, can you hear me?
yes, we can. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, this is Camilla Rang from Del Mar. I have a presentation also, if you can put that up. Thank you so much, Suhail. Thanks to Sandag going the right way by applying to the Coastal Commission, NCTD actually got what they wanted, a fence on the upper bluff and hardening of the bluff. It's time for you to withdraw your petition to STB. What we need now is to get the train off the bluff as soon as possible. No one wants to risk that train going down the bluff. I cannot even imagine the disaster and tragedy. You are gambling with people's lives. All that you accomplish with the STB petition is to waste a lot of taxpayers' money. You're also making yourself into a public enemy, breaking all our environmental protection laws that California has worked so hard for. And all that for something you cannot even make up your mind for, whether the stretch along Del Mar Bluff is dangerous or not. Next slide, please. In your petition to STB in May of this year, you say, NCTD cannot emphasize enough how dangerous this rail line is and how important the fence is. At the same time, in the very sad trial that took place a month ago, there you instead claim that at the very same stretch does not constitute any dangerous conditions. It's time to stop this charade. Withdraw your STB petition, fence the dangerous blind curve between Coast Boulevard and 13th Street, and focus on permanently move the train off the bluff before disaster strikes and the train goes down the bluff. Thank you.
Do we have any more speakers?
Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed, I have a couple of quick protocol items to share. First, I ask board members to please hold your comments and questions until after each agenda item has been presented. Second, when the time comes for board member questions or comments, please raise your hand and wait until you're called upon to speak. Before we dive into the agenda, I want to acknowledge that although we had planned to have an update on the Pronto system in response to feedback the district has received from customers and key stakeholders, staff needs a bit more time to ensure the presentation fully addresses the matter. Staff is advised that we may anticipate their presentation on this matter on or before the February 2023 board meeting. I'm sure I'm not alone in encouraging staff to present this update at their earliest convenience. Now, we now have one presentation item on the agenda. Lillian Doherty, Director of Planning and Development, will introduce the Superlative Group. The group will give an overview of the district's naming rights program, which is another element in NCTD's efforts to generate alternative sources of revenue. Lillian, you have our attention.
Thank you, Chair Edson. Good afternoon, board members. Today, we have an update on our naming rights program. A naming rights program is a form of advertising that generates alternate sources of revenue through the sale of the right to name transportation assets. Leveraging of transit assets to identify alternative forms of revenue is a practice that has been employed by other transit districts, such as MTS, MTA, BART, and others. On February 17th, 2022, the board approved a contract with Superlative Inc. to develop a naming rights program. That contract included a two-phase approach. The phase one valuation is now complete, which is the basis of our presentation today. The phase two sales cycle is anticipated to commence in early 2023. Staff will be actively vetting candidate sponsors. We will be supporting signage decisions and placement. And to the extent possible, signage decisions and placement will consider guidance in existing branding policies, plans, and other guidelines. In accordance with Board Policy 13, advertising, concessions, and marketing, any negotiated contracts will be brought before the board for review and decision. Here with us today from Superlative Inc. is Kyle Cantor, Chief Operating Officer, and Simon Hawkins, Managing Director. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to them.
Thanks, Lillian. Kyle Cantor, thanks for the time today. We're looking forward to presenting. Simon was unable to join the Zoom link, so it'll just be me this evening. How do I change the slide? Do I say change the slide or?
Yes, you can say next. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next. So just some quick background on our firm. We've been around since 1994. We're based in Cleveland, Ohio, but work throughout the US, Canada, the UK, and Ireland. Other transit sector assignments include San Diego MTS, LA Metro, New York MTA, Santa Clara VTA, Pierce Transit, and many others. So as mentioned, we've completed our first phase of our two-phase project here. That first phase, we identified all of the sponsorship and naming rights opportunities and then went through a extensive valuation process for each of those opportunities. Next. So our scope included both the Sprinter hybrid rail as well as the coaster rail and all rail stations. Obviously on the station side, we had significant focus on the redevelopment projects. So each of those assets, we went through a specific process to understand what the naming and sponsorship opportunities would look like, where the exposure would come from, what the signage would look like for each, and then ultimately what that value was. When we go through our valuation process, we're focused on your local market, the local market rates, the impressions associated with each specific asset. So it's a very detailed process, and we do that because then it's in a good position to support us through the phase two sales process. Next. So we included a couple quick case studies. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the UC San Diego Blue Line for San Diego MTS. We executed that partnership, and it includes, you see here, I think it was a good example because I think when we say naming rights to things, Often it's assumed that, you know, the whole line is wrapped. But you see here, it's really the name to that line. So it's incorporated in that sign on the front of the vehicle, in front of the trolley that says UC San Diego Blue Line instead of just Blue Line. And a nice peace signal from the operator I see there. Next. This is an example of a BRT. This is the Health Line. Many of you may be familiar with the Health Line. It is in Cleveland. It is co-sponsored by the Cleveland Clinic and University Hospitals. The line runs right through both of their campuses. But this is a good example of branding where we had the opportunity to impact the exterior treatment of the vehicle. And then we also subsequently went back and secured partners for many of the stations along the Health Line. So this image here on the right, you see the two partners, the two naming partners or presenting partners of the Health Line, the Cleveland Clinic and University Hospitals. And then you see PNC Bank, who is the sponsor of the station where this pillar is. So I think from we wanted to include that as an example of, you know, some of the visual branding and signage that comes along with the partnerships that we execute. Next. Additional exposure opportunities. So there's kind of the core benefits that are definitely in each partnership, and then there are these additional benefits that add value to any partnership that we execute. So when you think about all the grapevine maps, there, the image in the upper left, you see that UC San Diego Blue Line is then incorporated into all of those grapevine maps that are on every trolley. In the upper right there, and then on the bottom right is the Cleveland State Line. That's another BRT line naming rights agreement that we executed. That bottom one is, of course, a route schedule. You see the branding that's incorporated there that adds value to the partnership and additional exposure. And then in the upper right, you see the treatments on the Cleveland State Line at the stations and on the street side signage. Next. So I mentioned our valuation methodology. I think just to summarize this one, because I know it's text heavy, we need to look at everything that impacts a sponsorship or a naming right. And that needs to include anywhere and everywhere that anybody would see, hear, feel, touch a brand if it was associated with one of these assets. And so that's what our data and valuation team has been working on, and those are the results of this first phase process. Next. So we've included some just the top line numbers here. We of course identified a very specific value, but have included here the range for each. So when we move to the sales process, of course, we're targeting the top end of any range. And then like I said, we have our detailed backup valuation to support that sales process. Same with stations. Stations range from 40,000 a year to 200,000 a year for the larger hub stations. And again, each of those were individually valued with a summary box that we would include in any sales presentation to show where the value is and where all of the impressions would be generated. Next. So the next phase of our work would be that phase 2 sales process. And that's our firm out in the market on your behalf, identifying entities that we feel would make good partners, reaching out to those entities, developing a sales strategy to make an approach to each of them, developing all of the collateral that goes along with that process. So any presentations or mock-ups, renderings is all completed by our firm. And then going out and presenting those opportunities. And we work closely, I think our most successful projects, we work very closely with staff through that process. Ultimately, it's going to be a partnership between NCTD and our eventual sponsors. So we try to foster that relationship right from the beginning and throughout the whole sales process. Then we move into term sheet and contract. Our firm has legal counsel here on staff who works on these kinds of agreements every day. And so we support through that whole process as well, all the way through launch and implementation. Next. So those are our next steps. The first step for us would be to share with you a prospect list and go through the process of removing entities that we just don't even want to call on, and adding entities that you may feel we missed or want to make sure are on the top of our list. We prioritize our sales process and we try to target and sell those most valuable opportunities first. We do that for a number of reasons. The first one being our most common objection is, of course, they may like the opportunity and like the thought of a partnership with NCTD, but it may be too expensive. And so by targeting our most expensive opportunity, it always leaves us the ability to go back in if we do receive our most common objection and present something that may be a little less expensive. We also want to get that opportunity out in front of everybody first. If somebody's interested in a partnership, we want to give them the opportunity to move forward with one of the assets that's most expensive, instead of maybe selling them something that may be a little less of an investment when they had the financial capacity to make the investment at a higher level. And then we move through the assets. I think there'll be a certain point in time when we start to focus on some of the less expensive assets, whether they make sense for an entity from a geographical perspective or otherwise. We certainly look for the opportunity to kind of drop down and move other assets throughout that sales process. Next. That's our top level summary. We've included here in the appendix a table that has the value of every single station. I mentioned those range from 40 to 200,000 within our floor and ceiling value range. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Sahil, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll move to board comments or questions. Vice Chair Bhat Patel.
Yes, thank you. Just a few questions. I was just curious. I know we have we did have the pricing or the valuation results for that specifically. I was just curious because I look at obviously the term associated with that. So let's just say I'll use UCSD as an example. If somebody wanted to have a line named after them in perpetuity, does that mean that regardless of how long, every 10 years, they're going to have to renegotiate a value for the naming rights, or would we have something in place for people that would want like a longer term contract?
Yeah, so we would always try to tie value back to an annual value. And that escalates every year. Usually there's at least a 3% escalator in there based on, we try to tie, actually the UC San Diego agreement is tied to CPI. Probably not a great thing for them this year, but it usually averages out to about 3%. So there would always be a term though. So that one's 30 years. So that line will be named 30 years and there will be an annual payment for 30 years. And then there's an extension option on the end of it. So we would always try to tie a term to the value. I suppose if somebody came and wanted to receive a name in perpetuity, the payment would certainly need to be quite substantial, and we would say it would need to reflect the lifespan of the asset, which would be 30 to 50 years probably.
Great. And then are there specific parameters associated with like what types of entities or whatever else that I know, like, for instance, like, the city of Carlsbad has a memorial program or, whatever else in terms of not, naming certain areas. So just curious, like what types of parameters are in place to ensure, that we would have somewhat of a control over what it would be named.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have full control. We try to usually operate under your advertising policy as far as restricted categories are concerned. But happy to coordinate as we move into the market. I think you'll have several points of approval. The first is our target list. Then, of course, as we're moving through the process, if any entity is one that we want to deviate from or move towards, we're happy to adjust throughout, and then ultimately you'll have approval of any contract would start to get developed. But I think you'll be well up to date throughout that whole process based on our experience.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions from any other board members? Director Contreras?
Yes, I think this question is probably more for NCTD. So where's this money going to go? Is it going into like a general? Is it gonna help us with more wayfinding, signage?
So candidly, the strategy, at least from my perspective, has been to make sure that over the course of the next 5 years that we develop a robust revenues in the event that we don't fully recover all of the customer revenue we've had historically. And so this fits within the bucket of what we're doing in terms of our real estate development projects, looking at the totality of those numbers. But the intent is to have all of those dollars available. Typically for project level activities, these are what we would call local dollars or revenue dollars. They would match other capital activities that we would do. In some forms of these agreements, you could leverage certain improvements within the program of projects. And we'll look at those strategic opportunities. But the big picture focus, at least for me, is to make sure that, we have a 5-year balanced budget. What happens year 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we need to make sure we are in a posture of being able to plan for that.
Okay, so let me just dig into that a little bit more. So if we have a balanced budget and this is a part of that, can any of this funding address, because when you're talking about making ourselves whole, can this address any additional frequency that we might need as an organization, or is that kind of outside of the scope of what we're looking at?
No. So ultimately, all the revenues that come in to the district, the board, as part of the budget setting process, gets to tell the executive director and staff, these are what the priorities are. So again, we are hopeful that we'll be in a posture that we fully recovered customer revenue, plus we have additional revenues. And then there will just be a discussion amongst the board in terms of what are the priorities for the district that you want us to advance. So theoretically, anything that one would do. And again, with the focus, as the board has always done, towards using, what is the best color of money for whatever activity you want to engage in.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood money coming in is going where. So thanks. I appreciate it.
No worries.
Great questions so far. Any other board members? Seeing no. Oh, sorry.
Would you mind explaining how the station naming rights would go? Like, I'm assume we want to keep the location name within the larger name.
That's, and I think that probably the example would be, and I'm going to have the consultant earn the big bucks, but give the example in the context of the Coastal Convention Center, the station, the new station that's going to be located downtown. How would that work?
So that would be a great example. Let's say it was called the Padres Coaster Station. So it would be the downtown Padres Coaster Station. So in Encinitas, it would be, it could be, the the Threads Fun Encinitas Coaster Station. So you would just place the branding before the name of the station. And similarly, it would be along the coaster line, it would be, insert company name, coaster line, rail line.
Okay, and so then, when we, obviously, we're a very high touch community there in Encinitas. I assume we'll have a lot of opinions about it. Would we have the chance to discuss it within our own councils in our own city?
Well, that's going to be part of a robust discussion when we get there that we are going to have to figure out. I think Joel remembers years ago, we engaged in this discussion about station branding combined with naming rights, and each community has, kind of a different flavor for how they would like their particular community branded. I think it's going to largely be a board decision in terms of what we want, what direction we should ultimately go. The sweet spot about this is the revenue piece, as the enhancement to the district, and obviously to the degree, that we can kind of reflect all of the core, sentiments of communities. I think we should try to do that process, but I'm not sure we're going to get there in every instance. And I'll give it a tangential example is a lot of agencies in the course of bus stops have advertising. MTS does it. And you have advertising in bus stops, and you use it as a way to help support the maintenance and improvements to bus stops. But there are some communities that are opposed to advertising, regardless of what it is, within a bus stop shelter. And that's where you're going to get into those kinds of discussions. We do already have board policy that speaks to and provides guidance to staff already. But I think until we get there, it's a pretty tough discussion to have when I have nothing to show you. But I think our history has always been close collaboration. So I can't tie the hands of what the board's perspective ultimately would be. But Lillian and team will make sure there's a close coordination with our community partners, as always.
Just to double check that when the time comes, if we've secured somebody who's interested in renaming the Encinitas station and we're not happy with it, there'll be the opportunity to off-ramp.
Well, for the board to make that decision.
Okay.
So for the clarity of it, it would ultimately be a NCTD board of directors. You may I love Phil's Coffee in Encinitas, and you guys may not want to be Phil's Coffee Encinitas Coaster Station, but ultimately, that's a decision for the board to kind of do the cost benefit of that station, the revenue that's going to be generated, and the benefit of that to the district versus just the city of Encinitas making that decision.
Director Jenkins.
Thank you. I just have a couple questions here. Here we go. Is that better? So it looks like with the, hold on, keep turning off here. It looks like with these terms, it's anywhere from 5 to 25-year terms. I'm assuming the consultant superlative meets with, I guess the question is, do you meet periodically with the sponsors and debrief with them on a regular basis to see what kind of benefits they feel they're getting from the naming of the location, so that you're working with them throughout the term to see if they're going to re-up when the time comes? How does that work?
Yeah, so it all kind of depends on the term. As an example, if it's a kind of a 10-year agreement or a 20-year agreement, most of those benefits are outlined and memorialized at the beginning and then implemented there over the first year. And then going forward, kind of on a day-to-day basis, if there's kind of collateral that's being changed out or different logos being incorporated in different material, a lot of that day-to-day stuff, falls into the hands of your staff anyway. But if, as an example, if somebody was in a a shorter term agreement, we would absolutely, be engaged throughout that to, make sure that they were happy and be steering them towards a renewal. Or if there was a problem in the second year of a 10-year arrangement and whatever that issue was, we're tied into the agreement. So if it's a 20-year agreement, we're going to be engaged for 20 years. It's just a matter of what those issues are and how we can assist.
I guess I was thinking more about the benefits that the sponsor was seeing from spending this sort of money, to engage with them to see if they feel that they're receiving some sort of benefit from having their name on whatever it is.
Well, I guess that's oftentimes just reflected in continued, request. We already have a form of this on the bus system in terms of advertising and on our trains in the form of advertising. And guess what? Maybe it works for some people and doesn't work for other people, but we continuously have ads placed. And I think that's kind of the answer, and that's the broader market. People do this. Most companies, when they're desiring to do this, they have done their own analysis and made a determination of whatever profile of people they believe are they're going to be their potential customers, how many hits they're going to get with a particular placement of an ad or naming rights. So that's really a cost benefit determination that they make.
Mhm.
We're on the other side of it, just wanting to maximize our revenue.
Right. Okay, and then I just want to clarify the previous conversation where you mentioned about the these are one-time funds we're receiving. So just to clarify, I understand they would be used throughout the budget as needed, but we would not be using the one-time funds for ongoing operating costs. Is that correct?
So I think we slightly had a different conversation in whether or not these were one-time monies.
Mhm.
Okay. And so the board policy is explicit that one-time money can only be used for one-time activities. Okay. Now you're going to have this agreement over here where you're going to have certain aspects of agreements that are going to be multi-year agreement, that you could have 5-year revenue agreement, 10-year revenue agreement, 15-year revenue agreement. That's not one-time money, but that's a consideration that one would need to make in making a decision about if this is a baseline shift in my budget based upon this, should I do it? If this is pending to lapse in 5 years without assurance that somebody else is going to pick it up. So it's a very, very nuanced discussion about what is one time. I view one time as I got it this year and I'm going to spend it up this year, or it's a one-time jackpot of money, not going to get it again. That's the interpretation, I think. From a practical budget point of view, it's a different thing when you have a set of agreements that generate certain baseline revenue. So for example, the advertising revenue that we get on the bus system, we do include that in our ongoing revenues, and we estimate that revenue conservatively consistent with the board policy.
Okay, and just to clarify, okay, it's in here. These dollar amounts are annual.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more hands? Nope. Okay, great. This was an update only, so there's no vote required. Next on our agenda are minutes. May I have a motion and second to approve the minutes for the regular board meeting of October 20th, 22?
So moved.
Second,
Motion,
Contreras.
motion by Hensy, second by Contreras. Please call the vote. And I did because I asked the clerk to call the vote. So it was a head fake, sorry. Hensy and Contreras.
On the motion of Board Member Hensy, seconded by Board Member Contreras to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of October 20th, 2022. Board Member McNamara, Board Member Rodriguez absent. Motion passes.
Thank you. We have 14 items on today's consent agenda. So Hill, have any members of the public requested that any consent items be pulled?
No, Madam Chair.
Great. Do any board members wish to pull any items from consent? Okay, seeing negative head shakes, may I have a motion to approve consent items 3 through 16, less 2 and 5?
3 through 14 and 16.
3 through 14 and 16.
So moved, Contreras.
Motion by Contreras,
Second.
second by Bhat Patel. Please vote.
On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Vice Chair Bhat Patel to approve consent items 3 to 14 and 16. Board Member McNamara, Board Member Rodriguez absent. Motion passes.
Thank you. We have one other business item on today's agenda. Katie Persons, Director of Service Planning, is here to present item number 17. This item provides yet another example of NCTD's efforts to ensure that our operations match changes occurring within our respective communities. During this agenda item, we will hear about significant land use changes in the city of San Marcos and how staff proposes to adjust a Breeze bus route to provide better access to transit for residents. Katie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. We'll be asking the board to authorize staff to provide detailed information and receive public comment related to our proposed routing modification for Breeze Route 347. Next slide, please. For a bit of context, Breeze 347 operates within the city of San Marcos between Palomar College and CSU San Marcos, operating along Craven, Discovery, and San Marcos Boulevard. Due to construction in the area, the route has been on a long-term detour, which has prompted further evaluation of the routing. NCTD has also received public feedback in the recent months related to the routing and a desire to reach key destinations along San Marcos Boulevard. Next slide, please. Before detailing the routing specifics, a major consideration for NCTD staff that we want to highlight today has been the current and future development that the city has planned. On the screen here, we've listed 4 key projects of many that are particularly relevant to this route and NCTD services. I won't list all the numbers here, but you'll see that this area is definitely primed for a growth spurt. We're seeing a significant amount of housing and commercial development planned for the area, transforming corridors into areas that allow us to provide much more efficient and effective Breeze service. This proposed routing change is to ensure that NCTD is being responsive to the changes that we see in the communities that we serve. In addition to these more transit-friendly environments, CSUSM has also expressed ambitious growth plans and a desire to expand campus offerings. Connections from the university into other parts of the city will be important for students who live on campus without a car, or for folks traveling to the campus for their job. Next slide, please. This slide shows a rendering of the North City and North City West area, also referred to as the University District. Just to orient you to the rendering a bit, the 2 main streets you see are Twin Oaks Valley Road and Barham, and that southern sliver of land that's cut off on the bottom there is the CSUSM campus. So we're talking about the area just north of the campus. A portion of the construction plan for this area has been completed already, with the anticipated with the rest of the anticipated development occurring over the next decade. If you'll recall from the previous slide, an estimated 2,600 residential students and 1.5 million square feet of commercial space is anticipated for this district. And that blue line gives you a little bit of a sneak peek of a new stretch of service within our proposed routing today. Next slide, please. Discovery Village is another development plan for the area that we've evaluated. Our understanding is that the southern portion of the development consists primarily of single-family homes, while the northern portion includes a mix of uses of both commercial and residential. This picture also notes the Kaiser Hospital building complex, which is expected to open in fall of 2023 and include over 200 beds. All of this is to say that The proposed recommendation you'll see today factors in not only the current development in the area, but also future developments that will come online in the coming years. Next slide, please. So here we have the existing alignment for 347 as reflected in our baseline network. The existing routing travels along Craven Road, but has been on a long-term detour due to construction. Currently, it operates for a short segment on the 78 to San Marcos Boulevard, still traveling between the two campuses. Next slide, please. And here is our proposed alignment, which is routed primarily on West San Marcos Boulevard, and the two campuses remain as key anchors. The central theme of the customer feedback we've received is a desire to have access to the commercial and residential properties along San Marcos Boulevard. The proposed route also deviates very slightly on that southern end to provide access to grocery and shopping centers and the current and future Kaiser Hospital buildings. In September, NCTD previewed this routing change with San Marcos planning staff to gather their feedback and insight. Should the board approve today's agenda item, we would continue to work with them throughout the process for this reroute. And here is a side-by-side comparison to show the proposed changes. And I'm going to walk through a couple of data layers that helped us to inform our proposal and provide a bit more context. So a key consideration for staff in making this change is the location of low-income communities as designated by Assembly Bill 1550. The proposed routing will provide improved access to the Breeze network and key locations within the city. Next slide, please. We also looked at how this proposed routing might improve access for communities of concern. What you'll see on this slide is population by minority status. And the last data layer, population and employment densities in the area with population in red and employment in blue. You'll note there are some greater concentrations of population density along San Marcos Boulevard, just northeast of the 78. And that large white area you may see along Twin Oaks Valley Road will be home to those two key developments that I highlighted earlier in the presentation. So the proposed alignment that we have today provides service not only to denser portions of the city now, but also better aligns with key development projects in the future. Because this route has been on long-term detour, it will be very important for us to communicate the proposed change very clearly. We plan to offer a variety of feedback opportunities that includes in-person pop-up events, phone, email, and online opportunities. Our website will offer an overview of the proposed changes, how to provide feedback in the various ways, and a short form feedback questionnaire that we'll also leverage at our pop-up events in the community. Next slide. So the next two critical steps for NCTD staff will be to conduct public outreach and gather feedback on the proposed routing and also complete an equity analysis for the change. We plan to conduct the public hearing at the January Board of Directors meeting with a proposed implementation of April 2nd. And next slide. With that, the staff recommendation is to set a public hearing and authorize staff to receive public comment for the proposed modifications to Breeze Route 347.
Thank you, Katie. Sahil, do we have any public speakers on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Board members? Okay, I'm going to start at that end because I see a lot of hands being raised.
Okay, I have a couple questions here. Where is the in-person training going to take place? And I would think, excuse me, the timing of that, you know, will you be there at the busiest time of the day or how does that work?
Yeah, we're currently coordinating the logistics of those events, but our targeted locations are one event Palomar College, one event at CSU San Marcos, and then one event along that stretch of West San Marcos Boulevard. So likely the Boys and Girls Club or the community park in that area. And we want to reach folks at different times. So aiming for an opportunity in the early morning and then in the afternoon as well. But of course, dependent on logistics of our partners.
And you probably have the data as far as when the most riders are on that bus route, correct?
Yes, yeah, we have stop level ridership and time of day, all of that.
Okay.
Good data.
And then
how are you gonna deal with at certain times of the day, there's a lot of traffic on San Marcos Boulevard.
Mhm.
How are you gonna factor that in?
That will definitely be a key step with our scheduling consultant and our operations partners. We work to test out kind of a couple of different options for the route. We do have some experience in the area just based on the long-term detour that we're in right now. So we do have a good sense of how things are changing. And then we'll work to tweak kind of throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
Director Desmond?
Thank you, Chair. And I guess, just, what's our term, board member Jenkins, where I am, comments on San Marcos Boulevard. It's a busy 4-lane road with businesses right up against the street, essentially. And I'm just curious, hopefully going to work with the city
Definitely.
for those, but, and then are you planning any potential pockets where the bus, because if the bus stops in a lane, it's just going to stop traffic, which is probably already stopped, unfortunately. But it's possible turnouts or things like that, which, or not turnout, whatever the curbing is, where you got to go into the curb to allow for a bus to stop, but then also allow traffic to flow through. I think that's going to be helpful, I think, on that busy.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good luck. Okay, thanks.
Director Contreras?
Thank you so much for the presentation, and just to keep going on the traffic here. Yeah, I mean, when I've traveled this segment of San Marcos Boulevard, it's super congested, but I think there's also opportunities maybe with some of the strategies that NCTD is looking to put forward with transit priority signaling and transit only lines, which may not have any support politically, but I think that you want to make sure that those who are riding the bus are able to get from one place to another rather quickly and on time. That the frequency and reliability is a critical component of the mission of our agency here. And we want to make sure that we are providing good customer service in that way.
Mhm.
But I wanted to ask regarding some of the outreach efforts. I know that Universidad Popular is a really big organization, and they're actually located very close to this proposed realignment route. So I don't know if we've engaged with them to have outreach in a bilingual fashion. If we haven't, I think we should. So I wanted to make sure that we're having, multilingual outreach. But I would highly recommend reaching out to Universidad Popular. They've done a great job with different efforts in outreach. And I wanted to ask, in the bus itself, is it going to have something that says that there's going to be a realignment, a new route?
Yeah, we're preparing flyers now, and we definitely can put them on the vehicles, and we'll have them posted at our customer service centers as well. So we'll have a variety of printed materials available for current riders, as well as those pop-up events to try to get feedback.
Awesome. And just like as a technology point, because I don't know, but on the Pronto system, if someone uses this route, is there any way to this sounds like it could cost money, so I don't know, but like if someone's using it on this route, could it have like a pop-up that says, hey, this is going to, be changed in the future? Or is there anything like that we do? I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that functionality at this moment in time.
So we do have automated announcements, but I tell you what we'll do rather than brainstorm this here is we'll come back to you, our chair of our marketing committee.
Perfect.
And give you a good.
We'll have a good 5-hour
we'll have a good
discussion
spin
on
up
it.
on this.
Yeah, no, because I just thought it like in my head, I'm like, hey, if someone's using our Pronto system and they're using it on this line, is there a way to be smart about it and give them a pop-up notification, not only for this, but any other future proposed geolocation changes, right? So,
And in fact, I mean, as you say that, I do think we need to do all of the above kind of approach. And in fact, one of the things as we come back to have that discussion is like even on the city websites, one of the things I think we're going to try to be pushing for is for the cities to reflect a tab about public transportation.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because the city of San Marcos is going to likely be in the best position to help us to do that outreach. And as we're doing different projects, if we can come up with a standard of general information for all city websites, then having the specialized information that may be most relevant to that community, I think that's going to be a way, because which all you're alluding to is all of the above strategy in terms of making sure everybody knows, right?
Right.
And so let us come back to you with some detail, because you're spot on, is we got to kind of broaden out how we communicate to people.
Sure. If you want to create any shirts, I'll wear it and I'll, no, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much. Those are my only questions.
Thank you, Katie. Is there going to be any sort of ridership trend analysis based on what's happened maybe in the last couple of years? I know there's been construction and rerouting, so maybe it won't be apples to apples. Of course, you've had COVID as well, but hopefully the point of all this is that it will increase ridership and put it to where this future growth is. But will we get a report maybe in a year or two, or will we get some sort of analysis that will drive some of that?
Yeah, we certainly report route level performance in the service implementation plan each year in the budget. And we can also provide some ridership information at the January board meeting as well.
Is there any sort of instinct or feel on, will this route change grow ridership by 20%, 30%, anything like that? Yeah.
No, I think, candidly, this one is just driven by all of that amazing development and change that is occurring in the city of San Marcos. And, one change doesn't, this by itself is not the only thing in a series of activities that are occurring that I do think points well towards increasing ridership. But there's a whole lot of conditions that go along with it. So I think, kind of as we head into 2023, kind of my communication to staff and pretty much the whole transit industry is now we got to just re-baseline based upon where we are, because there's no need to continue to talk about what happened pre-COVID. There's a ton of information out there about what trends are, and everybody will tell you nobody can project accurately what's going to happen, in the future, but the next 5 years kind of will be telling more of the story, what is the new normal coming out of it. So it's going to be an excellent time to re-baseline and then really focus in on quality. At the same time, you're seeing so much development and infill starting to occur throughout the region that it gives us a good metric to be able to move more to quantifiable basis of seeing what we should be yielding as we make these changes.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe that the questions that our vice chair had were all geared up and ready to go. So Craven and South Bend and portions of Yard Crews and some other streets are now not going to be covered at all, correct?
Mm-hmm. And sorry, not Via Veracruz. I don't know if we want to go back to the.
It may change names.
Oh, right. Yeah. So just that southern portion. Mm-hmm.
So, do we have ridership there already?
We have past ridership information from this route at a stop level. It's been on detour for a couple of months now, so there haven't been riders there in recent history, but we do have that information to help inform our outreach.
Seems like we're taking the right steps. We're choosing the development that's happening. So it's great. We're headed forward to the public outreach and hearing what public say. I very much support Director of Transportation's thought of having a bilingual presentation that was completion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that I've asked for public.
I'll move to approve.
On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Board Member Quirk, to one, set a public hearing for January 19, 2023, for the board to consider the proposed modification of Breeze Route 347, and two, authorize staff to provide detailed information to the public and receive and consider public comment regarding the proposed modification of Breeze Route 347 in advance of the public hearing. Board Member McNamara, Board Member Rodriguez absent. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. This brings us to the Executive Director's report. Mr. Tucker, do you have anything to report?
Yeah, a couple of things.
Okay.
All right. First, the holiday train. I think an email has gone out to the board or will be going out to the board. It is officially sold out already. I think after 3 days. So yes, if you were looking to get on and then get a ticket next year. I'm eyeballing you, which is a great thing. And we've had a long history of that being one of the more popular services that we put out there. Another good piece of good news, we're going to be releasing a press release related to a transit-oriented development grant that we received from the FTA. So I think it's a total $300,000. It's going to support some analysis that we are doing in collaboration with at the city of Escondido about trying to consolidate parcels for further development. Just as a reminder, we already have an RFP out on the street in Escondido for the development of phase 1 of that, which is a big deal. Coming in January, unless something gets off track, we will have a recommendation related to the Carlsbad Village and the Poinsettia station stops. And so I'm reflecting that to say, plus what you've seen on your agenda today about the Sprinter stations that are advancing towards development, that we are really doubling down, combined with some of the discussions we're having with the city of Solana Beach on advancing all of these development projects into actual developments. This was something I know when I came on board was a high priority for discussion. But candidly, until you put the resources, you cannot make something like this happen. We had to invest the resources, but it's a really important activity for the district. Obviously, the community benefits of increased housing, improving quality of lives and connectivity. But make no doubt about it too, the revenue portion for the district is also very, very significant for us as we look to have greater financial flexibility in the future. So that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any board member reports, comments, or correspondence? Director Contreras?
I just have a question since, this is great, the Holiday Express. Since it is such a big attraction annually, do we do anything to also educate the public at this point on other things that NCTD is doing or have the ability to collect customer feedback or anything like that associated with this event?
No, I think we've always, and Chris maybe will come up and correct me, but typically we really viewed this as an opportunity to attract new people to the system because it's families bringing their kids, and on a lot of instances it's new people who are coming to the system. And that's what we view this as, is a great opportunity to introduce those folks to public transportation.
Okay, yeah, I'm just thinking, if they're new folks that are being introduced, that maybe we want to see if they liked it.
Oh. Well, we always get positive feedback.
Right? That's good. Yeah. Just any way that we can be a little bit more active in letting the public know what NCTD is doing and trying to get more customer feedback, especially from new writers. But I'm glad that it's sold out. That's awesome. Thank
Can
you.
I add a couple of points,
Yes.
Matt? So a couple things, great suggestion, and we do that. So a couple ways. One, we'll have near 10,000 folks over those 2 weekends at Oceanside Transit Center. So we'll have information available there. We also, through the ticketing, allow folks to opt in if they want to get information and updates about NCTD. So we gather those and they become a part of our stakeholder list that we communicate with regularly.
Awesome. Thank you.
So With the youth opportunity pass this year, are we doing any education or surrounding that, being that this is the youth focus?
Yeah,
event?
absolutely. We'll have youth opportunity information at the event when we're there. We have a it's if you've not been, it's quite a scene at OTC. So that we'll have a pop-up with all sorts of NCTD information, and it's very festive. So
So we as board members are invited to the platform, but if we don't have a ticket, we can't get on that. That's what he was looking at.
I should have eyeballed you too.
So board member Contreras. So when I started and when I was on MISPADA, we added the second weekend because the first weekend always sold out. And I'm like, let's do it for 2. And look, we're selling out both weekends. And that's been from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we should have a Valentine's train, you know?
You know what? Great minds think alike. We'll talk offline.
I just think
Love
that there's,
train.
yeah, I love train.
Love train.
Train, yes, absolutely. The love train.
Guys don't know how much heat I've taken in this organization with my love train concept.
I actually like the love train idea. Okay, so you have at least 2 people on your side. Okay, any other board member comments? No, I attended the Losan board meeting on Tuesday. And during that time, we received an update on the track stabilization efforts in San Clemente. The good news is they've engineered a fix. The bad news is it may take a bit longer than hoped to resume passenger rail service. Currently, the project completion date is scheduled for February 1st. That date may be adjusted, however, in mid-December once the first phase of stabilization has been completed. Speaking for the board and Losan staff, everyone hopes service can be restored ASAP, of course, but public safety is paramount. So you know, we were not going to put people on those tracks until it's the right time. Okay, Sahil, do we have any remaining public comments today?
We do, Madam Chair. Maria Campos. She wishes to have a translator. With your permission, may I translate?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Vengo por la ruta del 304.
I'm here to represent the bus route 304.
304. Traigo firmas.
I have signatures
Y una carta.
and a letter for your review.
Y lo que pasa es la razón de que la ruta no está saliendo correcta. Este es el sketch anterior de ese. Este está correcto. Este está incorrecto.
There's an error in the bus route writer's guide for bus route 304.
Estoy en la audiencia.
Timing is everything.
Okay. Este sketch está correcto y ese es el incorrecto. El horario está bien aquí y ese están desviando el bus hacia el camino real.
There's a discrepancy in the writer's guide that she has in her hand and the writer's guide that she has submitted for public comment.
Y la gente tiene que caminar, las personas caminan 1 hora hacia el trabajo.
People have to walk 1 hour to their jobs from that bus stop.
Ahorita pues está bien, pero vienen las lluvias y ese es el problema. Vamos a llegar todas bañadas.
Now it's okay, but when there's inclement weather, this may be a problem.
Yeah. Y lo único que queremos es que vuelvan a poner el bus a su sketch anterior.
The only thing I'm asking is that the schedule is corrected to the previous schedule that she has in her hand.
Hace 2 semanas traje y otras compañeras trajimos unas firmas.
2 weeks ago, I was here
Una
with
carta y
coworkers
ahora
of mine with a letter and signatures, and I came here to this building. Aquí.
¿Quiere el sketch viejo?
Sí, por favor. And just for the record, the writer's guide that she is handing me that she says is correct is the effective October 2021. We have since have an update for October 2nd, 2022. Your su carta va a llegar y aquí está para el board. Aquí, okay. Okay, that completes her public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for speaking. And Damon Blythe, if you could speak with this passenger. Thank you very much. Okay, Sahil, do we have any remaining public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Our last meetings of 2022 will be the Performance Administration and Finance Committee meeting on December 6th, 2022 at 9 a.m. and the regular board meeting December 15th, 2022 at 2 p.m. I wish all who celebrate Thanksgiving a wonderful holiday. This meeting is adjourned.